Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Wolfram Student Podcast. I'm Sam,
And I'm Rashan.
and we're your hosts.
This is the Wolfram Student Podcast, where each fortnight we dive into a new innovative project done by high schoolers using the Wolfram language.
For this episode, let's welcome Athanasios, who will be discussing his project on studying hyperchaotic finance systems. Hello, Athanasios.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Athanasios Paraskevopoulos, and I am from Greece. I am a teacher of mathematics with a proven track record of working in the field of education management. I have a bachelor's degree with an emphasis in mathematics from the University of Aegean, and currently I'm a graduate student in mathematics with specialization in applied mathematics at the Hellenic Open University. My interests are the study and the understanding of partial differential equations. As an undergraduate student, I wrote a thesis entitled The Laplace Equation and the Wave Equation in Plane Spaces. My main goal is to do a PhD on the didactic of differential equation using educational software and in particular Mathematica. It is an area of mathematics that I have realized that many students struggle with, and I would like to help them make it easier to understand.
Cool. Yep. That's a perfect intro. And Athanasius is also a Wolfram Student Ambassador, which is another way you've been connected with Wolfram, am I right? So yeah, great to have you here.
Yeah, just your graduate studies in partial differential equations are super cool. I like partial differential equations too, so
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
nice to meet someone else who's a geek about math.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting area of mathematics, but also a very difficult area of mathematics.
Yeah.
For sure. And just as an icebreaker, what would you say is your favorite Wolfram function? In all the years you've used Wolfram, is there something that sticks in your head?
I haven't thinking about that yet.
Okay. Is there like one that's more recent from like a project you did?
The recent project I have done, it's about the wave equation with polar coordinates at my university. It is an interesting project because we study the wave equation with the Schrödinger equation.
Oh, okay. That sounds pretty cool.
Yes, it is a difficult problem because we have, first of all, to prove with the separation of variables the analytical solution of the wave equation, and then to study this problem for different initial conditions and boundary conditions. And every time the solution changes, they give us other results.
Yeah. Cool. So getting into your project, can you first give us like a quick summary about what it's about?
Yes. This project that we will discuss today is entitled Study of the Superchaotic System. The chaotic system is a three-dimensional chaotic system. In this case, we will study the chaotic final system, a three-dimensional chaotic system. So, we rely on a three-dimensional chaotic system with the addition of an extra state, a variable. A dynamic model of finance composed of four sub-blocks: production, money, stock, and labor force, and expressed by three first-order differential equations. This model describes the time variation of three state variables: the interest rate, X, the investment demand, Y, and the price exponent, Z. The chaotic finance system is given, as we can see on the screen, with these three ordinary differential equations. Every time we will study this problem with given initial conditions, and we will solve the particular problem for different value of gamma, because this is the point of interest. First of all, we have to define some constants. As A, we have the savings, B or beta is cost per investment, and gamma is the absolute value of the elasticity of demand. These values are given from the paper we study. The next step, we have to define carefully the three differential equations. After, we need to use a method that will help us to solve this problem with good accuracy. In this particular problem, we use the improved Euler's method. This technique is an easy extension of Euler method. The improved Euler's method uses an average of the Euler's method and an Euler's method approximation to a given function. This technique requires two functions evaluation instead of one, and we use two simple steps of algorithm for implementation. Like every method, this improved Euler method has advantages and disadvantages. The two advantages that this method has, it is, first one, it is accurate for numerical problems, and second, it requires less error than the Euler's method. Hence, for good approximation is obtained with a very small h. H, it is the step size we use. But of course, there is also a disadvantage. It is not used for more than third order differential equations. Here, we defined, as we can see here, the function q. We define the improved Euler method. If we want to write the improved Euler method in Wolfram language, we have to be very careful because it is a big one and a difficult equation. And if we do any mistake, it will destroy our project. Now, if we define correct this equation, we plug in the initial conditions for A, B, and C, as we discussed above, and we will use as a step the 0.01, and after that, we will see the results on an interval from 0 to 1000. Here we use the parametric 3D plot to see the results of this equation, and we can note that the method gives us the characteristic structure of the attractor of the system. We can see that in this 3D animation here. The second case, one of the characteristics of systems with chaotic behavior is also called sensitive dependence on initial conditions. So we will change for a small value difference from the beginning in the first initial conditions, and we notice that the new initial conditions differ in each coordinate by 10 at the power of -3, as we can see now. We are going to study in a smaller interval from 0 to 200, and we use exactly the same code, but the only change that we need to do, it is here at the function q when we give the initial conditions. We have to change only the initial conditions to our code. As we can see, when we change for the new initial conditions, this program gives us a very different plot. Here we can see we have a total different plot than the first one, from the first case, when, as we can see here. Now, the second thing, it is we want to plot these functions, the x function, the y function, and the z function, which every one of them are dependent on t. And here we receive this plot. Now we want to compare the first case and the second case. First of all, we will design the graphic representation of x, y, and t for the first case. Here we receive the following plots for the interval 0 to 200, and we can see there are some differences between of them. Now we will design the graphic representation of x, y, and z for the modified initial condition, for the new initial conditions. As we can see here, the plots, it is different than the first case. Let's compare these two solutions on the same plots. Now we use these plots, and as we can see, from 0 to 60, the plots are almost identical. But then when the t is greater than 60, there are some spots spots here that the plots they have big differences. Each of the three plots for X, Y, and Z. We observe that in the interval 0 to 60, the solution show a slight divergence. The deviation become larger when t is greater than 60, sorry. More specifically, as regard the variables x and z, we observe larger deviations, as we can see in the first case and in the third case. The larger differences are characteristic of so-called sensitive dependence on initial conditions. If we try to change again the initial conditions and we use some bigger numbers, we will observe bigger and differences between the plots. Now we will discuss the other case when the gamma is less than 1. The third case, a case where the gamma, the elasticity of demands of the commercials, is less than 1. We will study it again on an interval from 0 to 200. We will use again the same code with the same initial conditions, and the only change that we have to do is to choose a number for gamma less than 1. In this specific case, we use for gamma 0.4. This, when we use and we run the code, we receive a plot totally different than the above two cases. We notice a big change in the behavior of the system. We can see a spiral trajectory, and the system appears to converge to a limited circle. We can see that in the middle of this plot. It is totally different from the other two plots that we have seen before. Now, we want to see if there are any differences if we change a little bit like before the initial conditions. So we choose the initial conditions with a very small differ at 10 of the power of -3, like in the second case, and we can see on an interval of from 0 to 1000, the two first plots, they give us the plots for X, Y, and Z. For the first case, when we have as initial conditions for X1, for Y3, and for Z2, and for the second, when we have changed the initial conditions. When we compare these two plots here, we can see that there is no change between these two plots. That means that the system is not sensitive dependence on the initial conditions. So the main idea of this project, it is that the system is sensitive dependence when gamma is greater than 1, and when we change the initial conditions, the behavior of the system change, and when gamma is less than 1, we can observe that the system is not sensitive dependence on the initial conditions. For me, it was a very interesting problem because I like to study about the economy and finance system, and that gave me a lot of information of what happened in a hyperchaotic dynamic system.
Yeah. This is really cool. I loved your Euler's method to like applying to the partial differential equations and then changing your initial conditions by a little bit. I have a question about your case 3 though. If you look at like the graph that you generated for it, like the interpolating table, yeah, the purple spiral thing.
Here.
No, the thing above that one.
Here.
This one. Yeah.
This one.
So that looks totally different from the first two, like you said. Because the first two had like some kind of similarity I could see, but this one was like completely different. Except
it's completely different.
Right. So, but when you like graphed, when you were like comparing them further below, they matched up like really nicely in those graphs down there, right?
Yes. Here on these plots, we can see as we change the initial conditions, the plot remains exactly the same. They have no difference.
So you're saying even though like in this third case, its graph is different from the first two cases, but when you change its initial conditions, the graphs remain consistent.
So this problem depends on gamma. If gamma is greater than 1, we have big changes. If it is less than 1, the changes, there are not at all. There are not changes.
So is the reason that it's consistent here because that function is like a more consistent spiral than the more interesting shape that the first two were?
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
And it is one of the most simple examples because in the initial paper that is published, they study more complex cases. But I have tried to study first the simplest version.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That looks really interesting.
So thanks a lot for talking about your project. Honestly, it was really cool, and I'm glad you were here to share it with us. So if you want to talk for a bit about, your thoughts about the Wolfram language, I'm sure you've used other program languages too. So if you want to compare between them or talk about what's unique about it, if you like something about it, what do you think could be different? I don't know. And then if you want to talk about your future projects with Wolfram, if you have any in mind or how you plan to use this in your future education, in your future professional life as a math teacher, perhaps in other ways. But yeah, that's feel free to go ahead.
Okay, of course. I used Wolfram language for first time in 2013 in my thesis, and I was impressed by its capabilities. The incredible thing about this language it is that even for novice users, it is very easy to learn. There are many books, videos, or other documents uh, on internet that make our life easier. I have never used other language. The first language I used it is Wolfram language and Mathematica, but now also I use Wolfram Alpha that helps me to create some problems for my students, and it is very helpful because I give the 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 instructions and the program creates some cool problems for my classes. I'm currently working a project for the wave equation and the Laplace equation in polar coordinates, and I will share it on Wolfram community. I have already shared some other project on Wolfram community too. In June, I will also be part of summer camp in Boston as a mentor, and I'm looking forward for this experience.
Cool. Yeah, those sound like wonderful future plans, and I wish you best of luck with them. And I hope you keep doing cool things with Wolfram, and best of luck in your future endeavors in general too. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was great to hear from you, and your project seems really cool. So we're looking forward to seeing other projects that you publish. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolfram Student Podcast. We hope you learned something new and took away insights from today's discussion. If you want to be featured in a future episode, fill out the form at tinyurl.com/wsp-s2-interest.
And be sure to tune back in some more time to hear our next episode. Once again, thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolfram Student Podcast.